Hey, so I don't even know how good this is going to be. I just wanted to riff on this for a bit. I'm not the best judge of character, all right? I unironically enjoyed the first Room movie and had to sit through multiple viewings to see why it wasn't actually like they say it's so bad it's good. I had to sit through multiple viewings to see the bad stuff. But anyway, I watched Avatar, Avatar: The Way of Water the other day, and I was just blown away by how awesome it looked, and I bought into it 100%, 110% if that's possible, and then I looked this up and I saw this review and it just made me disproportionately angry. So I wanted to just run through it. I haven't actually read the full article. I read about half of it and decided, yeah, let's talk about this. Avatar: The Way of Water's creatures, lush sky world and 3D visuals upstage story in James Cameron's Sodden sequel. So you can see they're using a linguistic trick here. Okay, Sodden to do with water, factually correct, but it has connotations, right? Because something that's sodden is meant to be like not good. So this is very unbiased, as you can see, and there's other thing here. Lush sea in 3D visuals upstage story. So you realize that the world of Pandora doesn't actually exist, right? They didn't just go there and film it and that's the whole thing. Like they actually had to create it. And you realize that creating computer graphics is a skill, right? Not like journalism. I don't know. I'll get into this later. Okay. What does it say here? James Cameron told the Hollywood Reporter the filmmaker's role is not to make climate change all doom and gloom anymore, but to offer constructive solutions. So see, this is framed in a certain way, like this, like what is this? Oh, is this the constructive solution? What? Despite somehow reclaiming its crown as the highest grossing movie of all time, James Cameron's 2009 sci fi eco epic Avatar remains that most curious of phenomena. A $2 billion mega smash that seemed to sink without a cultural trace. Now, this is actually a valid point because when the first Avatar came out, I mean, I didn't watch it. I watched it years later, thought it was pretty cool. But one thing that blew me away was that this ahead of its time, technologically forward movie was created by an old dude. The old Titanic dude, he made like a good movie. And he was ambitious and he didn't like fall off the career curve. Like he pushed forwards and anyway. This bit here, most curious of phenomena. So this is another sort of linguistic trick. Oh, how would I know it was going to be successful? How curious! This movie that I don't like is successful. What a mystery! It's crazy. Okay, 13 long years after the first film revolutionized the filmgoer's experience, Reed kicked off a short lived phase of 3D films. So 13 long years. So it's not that the technology had to come a generation forward. Okay, it's not that I look at this and as good as the first movie was, these graphics just dominate it. No, it's their fault because it took 13 years. Okay, it's not that they filmed live action actors underwater, trained them to hold their breath and free dive. No, it's that they're trying to make fetch happen. Kicked off a short-lived phase of 3D films. That's you realize the 3D aspect is not. It was a selling point at the time. It's not what the films are remembered for. And there are legitimate criticisms to this, okay? So When I saw the trailer for Avatar, I was a little miffed that it looked like this sci-fi, you know, action adventure combat between aliens and humans. I was a little miffed that it looked like that took a sideline to the uwu alien stuff. Thankfully it didn't. I won't spoil anything, but that's a legitimate criticism. But it's also it's become, one aspect of the film sort of stands out, and that's what it's remembered for. Not the fact that it was trying to pioneer 3D films. Or I See You. See, this is strawman stuff, right? I don't know. Maybe people were saying I See You. I don't think that's what it was remembered for. I think it was remembered for the technology, not the little kitschy. But it's this grabbing at the things that didn't work. Like, look down here. Will Worthington's marine-turned-blue alien native Jake Scully deliver his classic catchphrases, "I got this, let's do it, and hell yeah"? So how many people actually remember that in the first movie? It's conjuring these things that didn't land and portraying the movie as that. It's just lazy, okay? It's lazy writing. See, this is like neuro-linguistic programming. A generation has passed on Pandora and Scully, blah, 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 blah. But the way it's being framed is the Gen Zs have passed on Pandora, meaning the film didn't sell. And what's this? A miraculous offspring of Sigourney Weaver's late Dr. Grace Augustine, voiced and performed via age-defying motion capture by a 73-year-old Weaver herself. So, what is this? It's not that Sigourney Weaver is an amazing physical actress who is still able to do her own stunts and is just like, if I'm anywhere near as good a shape as Sigourney Weaver at 73 years, I should be so lucky. No, it's that they should have given the role to someone else. It's just these little, it's death by 1,000 cuts. It's some people, okay, no, really, some people can't enjoy things. See, what is this? What is this? Also in tow is Spider, Jack Champion, a feral human teenager who's inherited a legacy even more fraught than his white dreadlocks. What, so are white people not allowed to have dreadlocks? Is this like meant to be a burn on the movie? Like, what's the angle? There's not a whole lot to spoil in a plot that could be written on a proverbial cocktail napkin. So it's these little like, ooh, I know it's proverbial. That means it's a metaphor. So this is an Australian writer. And if you watch any Australian cinema or TV shows or something, there seems to always be a point where if a piece of Australian media goes above a certain level of success, then they make a really bad cash grab spin-off where they're referencing like The Godfather and scenes from Star Wars and stuff, but it's just Australian cinema. Like, Australian cinema has a real chip on its shoulder where it can't be original, and if something else, like, it has these like pretenses to something more than it is. It's like, oh, this isn't, if something's successful, then the spin-off comes and it's like, oh, this is an Australian cinema, we're referencing the classics. It sort of reveals that Australian cinema is not as cool as it wishes it was, and it can't stand on its own feet. See, it's just, there's too much. There's too much for me to drag up every sentence. But just as another, and I swear this will be the last one. Maybe I'll go back on that. But this bit here, okay? Colonel Miles Quaritch, the gung-ho human villain whose death in the first film hasn't prevented his consciousness from being uploaded into a Na'vi avatar. Like, okay, yeah, his death didn't prevent it because of science. Don't you guys like science? It's a science fiction film, okay? Stop trying to turn these things around on themselves. Like, we can enjoy things. People can enjoy things. Look, scene upon scene of visual effects showreels plays out for the better half of, brace yourself, 192 minutes. Okay, so are you saying that you go to a special effects, like a film which is pushing the envelope of special effects to the point where it's state of the art, it's next generation, and they have to bring on specialized equipment even just to film this stuff? And who knows what's going on the software end with Weta Digital. Like, they are incredible. And you go to this movie and you complain that you get 192 minutes of it, which by the way, people will say, "Oh, it's such a small story for that runtime." Well, guess what? The story is not in the bare facts of like what happens. It's the path between those events, okay? It's each of the little experiences that the characters have together in the settings. I don't know how else I can say this, but if you watch this, it draws you in a non-verbal way, if that makes sense. And you're going to complain that it's 192 minutes. Like, if this was 90 minutes, the opposite criticism would be thrown at it. It's not a valid criticism. And I guess that's the point of this whole rant, is the movie has valid criticisms. For instance, after I watched it, I saw an article, someone said, "Can you remember the name of a single character from this movie?" I actually couldn't, except for Jake Sully. That's a valid criticism. As far as I know, it's not mentioned here. The author of this article, their only criticism is, "I didn't like it." And that's not a valid criticism. You've got to bring a little bit more to the table than "I didn't like it." And you can't come in and not like something and then twist the words around to make it sound unenjoyable. Okay. The Sully's new host, a Na'vi Sea Clan with aquamarine skin who look like a cross between a Maori tribe and a fish dude. Well, guess what? This film, these guys didn't just smoke a bunch of weed and then decide to make a movie. It was planned. Okay, they look like a cross between a Maori tribe and a fish dude because that literally was the intention. Look, and his wife, Kate Winslet, certainly making a ... choice with her accent. What's wrong with that? I didn't know it was Kate Winslet until the credits rolled. It was good. I enjoyed it. Leave me alone. I enjoyed it. Okay, so this is something I wanted to... This is actually one of the things that prompted me to make this... I'll try to edit it, make it coherent. But anyway, look, it says here, without the first film's sense of new world discovery, The Way of Water, like so many sequels, is content to repeat the beats of its predecessor, only louder for longer and with cosmetic changes to the action. Okay, so if you watch the original Avatar, you'll note that the flying creatures, whatever they are, they have two eyes. And then in this movie, they have some whale-like creatures called the Tulkun, who also have a similar design. They have two eyes. Now, at first this may seem like a lazy writing, but in biology, there's something called convergent evolution or something like that, where different organisms end up sort of evolving in the same way because they're solving the same problems. Okay, so maybe on Pandora, it's a dangerous world, extra visibility is needed, hence the two eyes on each side of the head, and that's irrespective of species or something. Like, it's not lazy writing, it is consistent with reality, which is something called world building. Okay, so people are this is annoying me. This guy, this writer, is complaining about this movie like all James Cameron did was fly back to Pandora and wave a camcorder around. You know that's not a real place. It's a place which has to be designed, and it has to be consistent with the logic of the previous movie. Which, yeah, I mean, in the previous movie they didn't talk about the sea people, but sequels are allowed. You know what? Movies are allowed to get better. Encouraged to get better. I felt more emotional resonance with the sequel than I did with the original. The characters were more fleshed out. And it's this. It says, for all the performers' vividly rendered motion capture, the film's creatures have more personality. The whale is the real star, which comes as no surprise. Yeah. I liked the whale. The whale was very cool. They did a good job writing. Okay, the whale didn't write its own lines. They did a good job writing the whale and the whale's story and portraying the relationships between the tulkun, the whales, and the Na'vi. What's wrong? What's wrong with the whale being the main star? Babe, Babe, the pig who herds the sheep. That's an Australian film. The pig, okay, didn't write its own lines. Maybe I'm being unfair on this review, but I feel like this review is being unfair on the movie. Just because. And what does this even mean? Strives for humanism, his work strives for humanism while clearly getting off on the thrill of dynamically deployed hardware. What is dynamically deployed hardware? What is it? Why put a phrase in an article which doesn't even have a meaning? It's just this faux intellectual, I know what I'm talking about stuff, which is it's tiring. It's especially tiring when you see what's going on. Look, and that's before we get to this unfortunate dialogue. It's called a punch, bitch, goes one typical example. Okay. The way this guy writes it may not seem like it. That was funny. That was a joke. The punchline landed, literally. What's wrong with that? A scene in which Sully calls his teenage daughter baby girl, meanwhile sends the cringer meter way off the charts. Okay, that's out of context. That scene was okay. Watch the movie. This guy didn't watch the movie. Look, okay, an uncharitable reading might dismiss this as an old man's action picture in Indigenous alien drag. I had to do a double take on this. Yes, an uncharitable reading would dismiss it, and that's exactly what this article is doing, but it's being used as a technique. It doesn't... Yeah, this is an uncharitable reading, so don't do it. Okay? Just because you're... just because you're admitting... This line, like this negates the whole review, because it's saying this is the worst possible reading of this movie, and that's the one that I'm going with. Not a balanced opinion, no valid criticism, just I didn't like it. That alone should be reason not to pay attention to this. And then, of course, there's the environmental aspect. Okay? Yes, Yeah, this is an environmental film. It has environmental aspects to the story, does a pretty good job of being compelling with them. So why is that being twisted as and construed as a negative point? Okay? This like lazy writing, flashy technological excess masquerading as a social benefit to humanity. It's the perfect blockbuster for the Elon Musk era. The Elon Musk era. What what does that mean? Does anyone believe that the purpose of this movie was to make a change? Or is it just to coincidentally tell another story? Like, what's wrong with that? I don't know. This is just making me angry. I don't know. And then like it's this I don't know. Is this an Australian thing? Can any other people let me know? Is this just an Australian thing? Like picking on the new popular? Well, I don't know. Who knows if it's popular? Time will tell. Picking on the new like thing because the movie came out. It did its thing. I loved it. I would go see it many more times if anyone would sit through it with me. Because okay, I'll admit I'm disproportionately obsessed with this movie. I think it's very cool. I'm a computer graphics person. I can see the work which went into making it, and it's the first movie in a long time that I watched and I wasn't thinking about actors. I wasn't thinking about like, oh, this is a great movie franchise, but they've brought in some character actor. Like, I don't know, a Rodney Dangerfield. Hey, get no respect. Like, there's none of that. Hey, this is a nice planet. This is avatars. Like, there was no actor in there who came in and like messed the whole thing up with their own brand. And people who talk about a movie like the only aspect it needs to have is the story. Or like maybe they're like, yeah, it's got story and it's got good cinematography. Well, guess what? Computer graphics is a part of that as well. And just like a mainstream, well-produced song, if you look at the individual stems, they are all incredibly thin. Okay, the bass is thin, the guitar is thin, the drums are thin. It's because they have to blend in together. Okay, and I would say the conceptual framework of the story is thin, but that is because it's giving other aspects of the movie room to shine, which it's ultimately the test is whether people enjoy it, and I enjoyed it 110%. But anyway, this came out and it did reasonably well. It did reasonably well. It made like 100 and oh, okay. Domestically, it made like 130, 140 million. Worldwide, about 441 million, I believe, was the latest update for the opening weekend. And then this article comes out, Avatar: The Way of Water faces disappointing opening weekend. Okay, so 130 to 140 million is disappointing. Why? Because, I don't know, probably because some other writer didn't like the movie and wrote a biased, which by the way, this doesn't even make sense because Weta Digital is a New Zealand. Okay, now I'm not saying that Australian authors need to be biased towards New Zealand productions. And I'm not saying this is a New Zealand production, but this had pretty clear and heavy New Zealand influence. I mean, the fact that Weta Digital is a New Zealand company has nothing to do with this. Okay, they've worked with many major blockbusters across the board. So I'll discount that. That's lazy on my part. But the Maori influence, in the character design, and they do the haka and everything, like, but it gets sold off. It gets written off as a blockbuster. Like, that's a bad thing. Like, this is the best blockbuster that I've seen in years. I can't find it right now. Wait. Let me just... Oh, yeah, here it is. Okay. But will audiences be sufficiently dazzled by a computer-generated spectacle the way they were in the relatively... Oh, what is this? This isn't even proper writing. In the relatively more innocent days. What? Okay, when I was in grade 5, I wrote like this. I'm guessing this author is an adult. I'm sorry, that's a low blow, but don't write this, okay? Before the landscape shifted towards endless, enervating superhero tentpoles loaded with visual effects and denuded of wonder. Yes, that is... I forget the logical fallacy, but that is exactly the reason that audiences would like this. Because in our modern day, we have visual effects spectacles which are denuded of wonder. And this is something which has emotion. It has emotional gravity. And it's just, you would... I enjoyed it. Leave me alone. Anyway, so it makes disappointing first weekend. What does it say here? $134 million. Disappointing. You realize the first Avatar opened at 77 million, right? I mean, I understand would be a little easier for the sequel to open higher because the reputation was already laid. And whereas in the first movie, it had a longer tail, it was earning for longer. Probably this movie will not, that curve will be a little bit shortened because people already know about it. The reputation's already laid out and everything. But this is just linguistic trickery. It's just a trick to either make themselves look cool or make other people... I don't know. But you can't do this. If you don't enjoy a movie, give reasons. Show your evidence. Anyway, that's it from me. I'll try to edit this down, make it coherent. But I just wanted to talk about that because this really just annoyed me. All right, cheers.